What will a proposed $110 million capital project do for Watertown City School District? 7 News reporter Gage Kilborn sees what fixes would be made and learns how there is one item at the very top of everyone's list.
The 10 buildings that make up the Watertown City School District campus are aged and worn down. Superintendent Dr. Larry Schmiegel is proposing a $110 million capital project to take care of several things.
Our facilities for a number of years have been neglected. This is an opportunity for us to come together and really prioritize some critical need things.
Examples include at North Elementary fixing the school's masonry work and patching potholes in the parking lot. At Starbuck Elementary, right now kids play on an old wooden playground. A new one would get built, and this entrance would get an upgrade. Meanwhile, at a recent school board meeting, member Millie Smith brought up what parts of the schools look like on the inside.
Walking in and seeing that,
right.
The decor, the furniture, and really feeling like you're in a whole new place. I mean, some of the furniture in some of our schools is really sad. It's depressing.
There was one area that seems to be a priority of school administration, school board members, and student and staff, and that is school security.
The fact that everyone is on the same page and they're committed to make sure that our schools are safe is critically important.
The $110 million project, if approved by the public, would happen in 3 stages, putting more urgent fixes at the front, like security, new roofs, and windows. Look for full details of the project in December. A public vote is expected in March, and around 90% of the $110 million would be covered by the state, with the school using savings to pay for the rest. Schmiegel doesn't expect school taxes to be affected. Gage Kilborn, 7 News.